My name's Darius. I'm from Houston, born and raised. Up until a few weeks ago, I was living in a tiny but decent apartment 5 minutes from downtown. Nothing fancy, one bedroom, stained carpet, kitchen light that flickered when the microwave was on, but it was mine. And then, just like that, it wasn't. The building got sold. Some real estate group out of state bought it up, probably to gut it and turn it into another luxury place no one who actually lives here can afford. My landlord didn't even warn us, just a letter taped to the door saying we had 30 days. I scrambled to find something else, but with rent the way it is, man, it felt like trying to win the lottery. I called James, my best friend since high school. We used to hoop together, skip class together, fail algebra together. He's the kind of guy who always picks up, even if it's 2 a.m. When I told him what was going on, he didn't even hesitate. Bro, come stay here, we got space. Now, when James said here, he meant his family's house, his mom's house, to be specific. I'd been over a few times over the years, usually just to hang or play video games in the basement. But living there, that was different. I felt weird about it, honestly, like I was stepping into something I shouldn't. But I didn't have a backup plan, and the clock was ticking. So I packed my bags, said goodbye to my crappy apartment, and Ubered across town with a suitcase and a garbage bag full of clothes. The house itself was warm, like literally warm, but also homey, clean, but lived in. Family photos everywhere, little decorations with words like blessed and gather on the walls. The kind of place where the kitchen smells like something's always cooking, even when it's empty. James met me at the door like it was no big deal, dapped me up, grabbed my bag, and led me down the hall to the guest room. "You good here?" he asked, dropping my stuff by the bed. "Yeah, man, thanks again." He grinned. "Just don't eat all the cereal. Mom gets territorial." We both laughed, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being a little out of place, like I was borrowing someone else's life. That feeling only got stronger when she walked in. "Darius," she said, smiling wide. James's mom, Monica. She looked the same as I remembered, maybe even better. Hair pulled back, jeans, a soft sweater that fit just right. She didn't look like someone's mom, if that makes sense. She looked like she ran a business or did yoga at 5 a.m. or dated guys who wore cologne that cost more than my rent. "Hi, Miss Ellis," I said, standing a little straighter. "Oh, stop," she said, waving me off. "It's Monica. You're staying here, not applying for a job." Her voice had this calm to it, confident but gentle. She stepped in, pulled me into one of those mom-style hugs that lasted just long enough to make you forget your stress, then held me at arm's length. "James told me what happened, and I'm sorry. That's a tough spot." "Yeah, it's been a lot." "Well, this is your home now too, okay?" I nodded, managing a small smile. "Okay." After she left, James smirked. "See? Told you it'd be fine." I flopped down on the bed after he left, just trying to take it all in. The room was small but cozy, clean sheets, a little desk, a closet with extra blankets. On the nightstand, there was a small lamp and a book. The Alchemist. It felt weirdly symbolic. That night, I barely slept, not because the bed was uncomfortable, but because everything else was. I was grateful, don't get me wrong, but something about being under someone else's roof just messes with your rhythm. I felt like a guest, even though they said I wasn't. Every creak of the floor, every sound in the hallway, I kept wondering if I was being too loud or taking up too much space. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and something sweet, maybe cinnamon rolls. I walked out into the kitchen, hair a mess, still in yesterday's hoodie. There she was again, Monica, standing barefoot in front of the stove, stirring something in a pan. "Morning," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "Morning," when I replied, trying not to look like I had just rolled out of bed, even though I had. "Hungry?" "Yeah, actually." "Good. Sit. You're not skipping breakfast in this house." Her tone wasn't bossy, just certain. She moved with this kind of easy grace, like every movement had intention behind it, and I couldn't help but notice the way her sweater slipped slightly off one shoulder as she reached for a plate. I looked away quickly. Whatever that was, I wasn't going to go there. I was here because I needed a place to stay. That was it. Monica, she was my best friend's mom. Confident, stylish, way out of bounds. Still, something in the air shifted that morning. Nothing dramatic, just a small, strange sense that something was beginning, even if I didn't understand what. Living under someone else's roof is a strange experience. No matter how kind they are, how welcoming they make it, there's always this quiet pressure to not mess anything up. The first few days in Monica's house, I felt like I was constantly holding my breath. Like if I put a plate in the wrong cabinet or forgot to wipe down the counter, I'd be exposed as a guy who didn't belong. James didn't care, of course. He was the same as always, laid back, distracted, usually halfway through a protein shake or talking about crypto. But Monica, she noticed things, not in a bad way, just attentively. It started with small stuff, like how she'd switch the hand towel in the bathroom every other day, or how she'd refill the soap dispensers without a word. Then I started picking up on her schedule. Morning jogs, a green smoothie right after, news playing quietly in the background while she answered emails barefoot in the kitchen. I tried to stay out of the way, I really did, but the house had its own rhythm, and eventually I found myself sinking into it. Mornings were when we crossed paths the most. She'd be at the kitchen island sipping her smoothie, and I'd stumble in for cereal, trying to be casual while my hair still looked like I slept upside down. She was usually wearing something simple, leggings, a tank top, sometimes just one of those soft robes that looked expensive but effortless. Always elegant, always Monica. One morning I came in as she was putting away dishes. She looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that's soft around the edges. "Sleep okay?" she asked. "Yeah, eventually," I said, scratching my head. "Your guest bed's way nicer than my old one. I might have actually had a full dream for once." She laughed. "Careful, you'll get used to it. Then you'll never want to leave." I chuckled, even though something about the way she said it made my stomach do a slow flip. There was nothing inappropriate about our conversations, not really, but there was a tone or timing, little silences that hung in the air a second too long. One afternoon, I passed her in the hallway as she was walking out of the laundry room, her arms full of folded towels, her perfume, light and floral, lingering after she passed. "Thanks again for helping James carry in those groceries," she said. I shrugged. "No problem. I was just standing there like an idiot anyway." She smiled. "You're not an idiot. You're observant. Big difference." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just smiled back and kept walking. But the way her eyes lingered just for a second, it stuck with me the rest of the day. At night, after James went to bed and the house went quiet, I'd lie there staring at the ceiling. And somehow, instead of worrying about job applications or my apartment hunt, I'd find myself replaying her voice in my head. "You're observant. Big difference." It was dumb. She was just being nice, that's all. But I couldn't ignore how aware of her I'd become. The way she carried herself. The way her laugh always sounded real. Never forced. The way she looked directly at you when you spoke. Like your words mattered. James started teasing me without realizing it. "You're like part of the family now," he said one night while we played video games. "Monica's already talking about stocking your favorite cereal." "Don't say her name like that," I joked, trying not to sound defensive. He gave me a look. "Dude, you literally live with her. You're like her second son now, right?" I said, smiling. Second son. But deep down, I knew that wasn't how I felt, and definitely not how I wanted to feel. Monica wasn't treating me like a son. She was too careful with her words, too gentle with her glances. There was something unspoken building between us, like static in the air that hadn't quite found a spark yet. One evening, James had gone out to meet a girl he'd been texting, and I was left alone in the house. I made myself a sandwich and was halfway through eating it at the kitchen counter when Monica walked in, fresh from a shower, damp hair down, wearing one of those cozy, oversized sweaters that somehow still looked like high fashion on her. She paused when she saw me. "Didn't realize you were still up," she said, walking over to the fridge. "Yeah," I said, suddenly self-conscious about my posture, my plate, my everything. "Just got hungry." She grabbed a bottle of water and leaned against the counter across from me. This house has a way of doing that. Something about the quiet makes you realize what you're missing. She looked at me as she said it, not in a motherly primo in a woman kind of way. I swallowed a bite that suddenly felt dry. I guess I've been missing a lot of things lately, I said. Neither of us said anything after that, just silence. Not awkward, not tense, just full. Later that night, back in my room, I lay down and stared at the ceiling again, and I realized I didn't feel like a guest anymore. By the second week, whatever wall had been between Monica and me wasn't just cracking, it was gone, but not in an obvious way. Nothing had been said out loud, we hadn't crossed any lines, but there was this current between us now, like a quiet radio frequency only we could hear. Monica started finding reasons to be around me. Nothing dramatic, just convenient. Hey Darius, could you help me get this box down from the top shelf? Mind taking a look at the garage light? It's been flickering again. Can you open this jar for me? My wrists are hopeless today. Always simple things, always with a smile, but more and more our hands would brush. Her fingers would linger just a second too long when she passed me something. And every time I'd feel it, that slow burn. It wasn't just about being near her, it was how aware I became of everything about her. The way her voice dipped at night when the house was quiet, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the scent of her perfume. Subtle, clean, always the same. One afternoon, she was rearranging things in the pantry and asked me to hand her a few containers from a lower shelf. As I knelt down and passed her a jar, she crouched next to me, close enough that I felt the warmth of her skin. You always this helpful? She asked lightly. Just trying to earn my keep, I said, trying to sound casual. Her eyes met mine for a beat longer than necessary. You're doing more than that. She stood up slowly, smoothed her blouse, and walked away without looking back. But my heart was thumping like she just whispered something far more dangerous. Even in crowded rooms with James around or the TV playing, there was a kind of gravity between us, like we were tuned into a private wavelength, and I wasn't imagining it. One Saturday evening, we were all in the living room watching some forgettable movie. James was half asleep on the couch, scrolling his phone. Monica sat in the armchair, legs tucked beneath her, a blanket over her lap. I was on the floor, leaning against the ottoman. At some point, I felt her eyes on me. I looked over. She didn't look away, just this quiet, knowing smile. Soft, a little sad, maybe. Like we were both thinking the same thing, but neither of us would dare say it out loud. The next morning, we were alone in the kitchen again. James had gone for a run. Monica was sipping her coffee, hair up, still in pajamas. She looked tired but peaceful. She leaned on the counter and asked, "You seeing anyone?" The question caught me off guard. "Nah," I said, "not lately." She nodded, looking into her cup. "You seem like someone who wants more than just casual." I tilted my head. "Yeah, I guess I want something real. Someone who actually sees me, you know." That made her pause. She looked at me with a kind of stillness. No smile, no teasing. "That's rare," she said quietly. "Being seen." Her voice dropped on that last part, like it meant more to her than she was letting on. Then she turned, put her cup in the sink, and walked out of the room. I stood there for a while after she left, unsure what had just passed between us. It wasn't flirting, not exactly. It was something else, something deeper, like we'd peeled back a layer neither of us had planned to. Later that day, we were all in the backyard. James was tossing a football around with a neighbor kid, and Monica came out with a pitcher of lemonade and 3 glasses. She handed me mine first, fingers brushing mine longer than necessary. No one else would have noticed, but I felt it clear as day. Evening came and I was back in the guest room, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. Every now and then, I'd hear her footsteps in the hallway, light and even. Once they paused outside my door. She didn't knock, didn't say anything, just stood there for a second, then walked on. That night, I couldn't sleep. My head was a mess. My heart kept repeating her words. It's rare being seen. It was like we were dancing on a tightrope, each of us pretending we weren't aware of the drop beneath us. And maybe we hadn't fallen yet, but gravity was definitely doing its thing. I didn't know where this was going. I didn't even know what I wanted, but I knew this much. Monica wasn't just my best friend's mom anymore. She was a presence, a weight, a question I couldn't stop asking myself. Even in silence, she was starting to feel like an answer. James had a weekend trip planned with some guys from work, camping or fishing or something else that involved no phone signal and way too many granola bars. He packed Friday morning, tossing gear into his trunk like he was preparing for the end of the world. "You sure you'll be good here?" he asked as he tightened a strap on his duffel. "Yeah, man, I'm not exactly helpless," I said, smirking. He laughed. "Right, just don't eat all the lasagna in the fridge. That's supposed to last you 2 days." I saluted. Scout's honor. He pulled out of the driveway around noon, and just like that, the house felt different. Quieter, not just in sound, but in atmosphere. Monica worked from home that day. I heard her voice on Zoom calls, the occasional click of heels across the hardwood. But even with the normal background noise, everything felt sharper, like my senses were dialed up to a level I didn't ask for. That evening, she knocked on my door, not her usual quick tap. This one was softer. I opened it to find her holding two wine glasses. "I was about to open a bottle," she said. "Figured it'd be more fun with company." I hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Yeah, sure." We sat at the kitchen table, just the two of us, while twilight filled the windows. The wine was red and smooth. She poured slowly, like she'd been waiting for this. Dinner was simple: pasta, salad, garlic bread. I helped set the table. We didn't talk about anything big at first, just the day, the weather, random stuff on TV. But there was something in the air, and we both knew it. About halfway through the second glass, Monica leaned back in her chair, her eyes softer than usual. "You know," she said, swirling her wine, "it's been a long time since I felt this light." I looked at her, eyebrows raised. She smiled, almost embarrassed. "I didn't mean to make that sound heavy. I just mean I forgot what it feels like to enjoy someone's company without it being forced." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that." Then I surprised myself. "You make me nervous," I said. She tilted her head. "Why?" "In the best way," I added quickly. "Like when someone important walks into the room and you feel it." She stared at me for a second, then laughed gently, like she didn't expect me to say that, but wasn't surprised either. We sat in that quiet for a while. The wine was almost gone, the pasta half finished, and the kitchen lights cast everything in this warm golden glow. It didn't feel like someone else's house anymore. It felt like a moment we'd both stepped into fully, like we'd agreed to stop pretending. Her eyes met mine across the table. Neither of us smiled this time. I don't know who moved first, but suddenly the space between us felt too small and too big at the same time. I stood up, and she did too. The clink of glass against the table, the soft rustle of her blouse as she shifted. And then it just happened. We met halfway, somewhere between the fridge and the counter, and she leaned in first. Our lips met like we'd both been holding our breath for weeks. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. It was hesitant, searching, but it burned in this quiet, slow way that said we'd both been thinking about it longer than we admitted. When she pulled back, her face was close enough that I could still feel her breath. "We shouldn't," she whispered. But we both wanted it. I nodded, my heart pounding. "Yeah." There was no follow-up, no decision to go further, just that kiss, standing in the kitchen, wrapped in shadows and silence. But it changed everything. After that, we didn't speak much. She said goodnight and disappeared down the hall. I went back to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed like I was waking up from a dream. I wasn't ready to leave. My hands were steady, but inside I was a storm. I knew the rules, knew how this looked, but I also knew what I felt. That night, I didn't fall asleep easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way she looked at me in that pause after our kiss. Not guilty, not ashamed, just real, present. And I think that scared me more than anything. I woke up the next morning with the memory of that kiss playing on a loop in my head. It felt unreal, like I dreamed it. But the look in her eyes before she walked away was burned into me. There was a no taking it back, no pretending it hadn't happened. The house was quiet. James was still gone. And for a moment, it almost felt like I was the only person alive in it. I stayed in the guest room longer than usual, sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my phone without really seeing anything. Every sound out in the hallway made my chest tighten. By mid-afternoon, I still hadn't seen Monica. I figured she was avoiding me, or maybe I was avoiding her. Either way, I tried to give her space. I went for a walk around the block, grabbed a coffee from the gas station, came back, and holed up in the room again. It wasn't until late evening that I heard a soft knock, three gentle taps, not rushed, not casual. My pulse kicked up. When I opened the door, she was standing there, no wine, no plates, no excuses, just Monica. Her hair was down, damp from a shower, falling around her shoulders. She wasn't dressed up, just a simple long t-shirt that reached mid-thigh, bare feet, no makeup. She didn't say anything at first, just met my eyes and held them. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. She stepped a little closer. The hall light behind her made her look almost like a silhouette, soft edges, warm glow. There was no plan in her expression, just this quiet certainty. "I keep thinking about last night," she said. "Me too." Me. She exhaled, a sound somewhere between a sigh and a laugh. Then, without another word, she reached out and took my hand. It was such a small, simple movement, but it felt like a door opening. I followed her down the hallway. The house was dark except for a faint light spilling from her bedroom. She didn't lead me in with a dramatic flourish. She just walked, steady and sure, like she'd already made her choice hours ago. Inside, everything smelled like her. Clean sheets, faint perfume, a trace of lavender. The lamp on her nightstand was turned low, casting a soft amber glow across the room. We stood there for a moment, both of us silent. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then she reached up and touched my face with one hand. No rush, no game, just a gentle touch like she was memorizing me. I kissed her back like I'd been holding it in for weeks, which I had. She responded with the same energy, not hurried, not desperate, more like a release. Like we'd been building to this and now finally letting it happen. Her fingers traced along my jaw, down my chest, a slow map of curiosity and intent. It wasn't like the movies. There was no soundtrack, no perfect camera angle, just the sound of our breathing and the soft shift of sheets as we moved closer. The world outside might as well not have existed. At one point, she whispered my name, barely audible, like a secret she wasn't supposed to say. The sound of it sent a shiver through me. Everything about that night was slow, careful, tender, not cautious in a fearful way, but in a way that said, "This matters." Every look, every touch felt like it had weight. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. We fell asleep like that, side by side, her head on my shoulder, the lamp still casting its glow. I don't even remember closing my eyes. Morning came with soft light slipping through the curtains. I woke up before she did, lying still, staring at the ceiling. It felt both unreal and inevitable at the same time. When she finally stirred, she didn't say anything, neither did I. We just lay there, the silence between us speaking louder than any words. For a few minutes, it felt like the whole world was holding its breath with us. Like time had given us this small, impossible pause before everything outside came rushing back. I didn't know what would happen next, but in that moment with her beside me, I didn't want to know. After that night, nothing looked different. The house was the same, the walls still lined with family photos. The hallway still creaked in that one spot near the kitchen. James came back on Sunday afternoon with a sunburn and a bag of dirty laundry, talking about how they almost lost the tent in the wind. Everything was normal, or at least it played that way on the surface, but for Monica and me, everything had changed. We didn't talk about it. There was no dramatic "what are we doing" conversation. Just this quiet agreement. We didn't need to speak it out loud, and somehow that made it feel even more real. Mornings became something else entirely. I'd walk into the kitchen, and she'd already be there, leaning over her coffee, eyes meeting mine, with the smallest hint of a smile. James would be busy making toast or scrolling at his phone, and the whole time I'd feel her gaze like a thread pulling at me. She never touched me in front of him, not even accidentally, but every movement she made had that same low hum of tension. The way she passed a mug, the pause between words, the glances that lasted just one beat longer than they should. At night, when the house went still, we became someone else's secret. Sometimes it was as simple as a knock on my door, her silhouette in the dark. Sometimes it was a message, just one word. Awake? I always was. Those nights were different from the first. Bolder, less uncertain, but still filled with that same quiet intensity. Our moments together never felt rushed or careless. It was like we were building something in the quiet, brick by slow brick, behind a door only we could see. She'd say things sometimes, soft, half-whispered, like she didn't plan to, but couldn't help it. You've given me back something I thought I'd lost. I remember the first time she said that. We were lying side by side, her fingers tracing along my forearm. I didn't ask what she meant. I already knew. She wasn't talking about excitement or thrill. She was talking about feeling, about being seen. I turned toward her and said, "You're the first person who makes me feel whole." She looked at me like no one else ever had, not surprised, not overwhelmed, just there, fully present, fully Monica. We knew it couldn't be public, not yet, maybe not ever, but that didn't stop us from wanting each other. It became our hidden rhythm, a series of silent routines. We'd cross paths in the laundry room, and her hand would brush mine as she handed me a folded towel. I'd glance over the kitchen counter, and she'd look up at just the right moment, her lips curling slightly, as if we shared an inside joke the rest of the world would never get. Sometimes I'd hear her laugh through the walls while she was on the phone, and it would make me pause whatever I was doing, just to listen, just to know she was nearby. We started exchanging little messages. Sticky notes slipped inside the drawer where I kept my headphones. Short texts when we were in separate rooms. Still thinking about you. You smelled like me all day. Last night we played all morning. It wasn't just about physical moments. It was the quiet ways we reached for each other without needing to be obvious. Like she'd save the last spoon of coffee, creamer, and tell James, "Darius likes it in his coffee." Tiny things, hidden things, ours. One afternoon, James and I were out front washing his car, and Monica came outside with lemonade. She handed him a glass and then handed me mine carefully. She didn't look at me, but I caught the faintest smile tugging at the corner of her mouth as she turned away. That smile stayed with me all day. Sometimes I'd walk past her closed bedroom door and pause, not to knock, just to feel the weight of it, knowing she was inside, knowing what we'd shared between those walls. There was one night, though, where it all felt too real. I woke up restless, heart racing for no reason. I opened my phone and stared at her last message. "Still awake?" I typed one word. Need. Not even a minute later, my door opened. No words, just her. A look that said everything. That night was different. Not frantic, not wild, just full of something deep, a kind of closeness that made everything else disappear. She held my hand longer, pressed her forehead to mine, whispered things she hadn't said before. "I don't feel invisible anymore." And I whispered back, "You're the only thing I see." I meant it, every word. We were living between the lines of routine, of rules, of what people would say if they knew. But inside that space, we'd found something real, something that didn't need to be defined to matter. We promised we wouldn't stop, not because we knew where it was going, but because we finally felt alive. Secrets have a shelf life. Ours had lasted longer than I thought it would, held together by careful timing, lowered voices, doors quietly closed behind us. But tension has a way of creeping in when you least expect it, and lately we were starting to feel it. James wasn't stupid. He'd always been chill, distracted, not the type to overthink things, but even he couldn't ignore how often I was around now or how different the house felt. One afternoon, we were watching a game in the living room when he looked over suddenly and said, "You spend more time here than I do, man." I laughed it off. "Free Wi-Fi and home-cooked meals. Can't beat that." He smirked. "Careful. My mom might adopt you." That one landed differently. I played it cool, but my stomach twisted. He didn't mean anything by it, or maybe he did, just not consciously. But I felt the shift in his voice, the edge. Later that evening, I got a message from Monica. "He's paying attention." I stared at the screen for a minute, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. Then I typed back, "We can't undo this. I don't want to." There was a pause, a long one, then her reply came through. Me neither. But knowing we were on the same page didn't make it easier. If anything, it made everything feel more fragile. Every glance, every brief exchange in the hallway suddenly felt like it had eyes on it. James started joking more often, little comments about me becoming part of the furniture, or how I knew this house better than him now, always with a laugh, but not the same kind of laugh he used to have. Monica noticed it too. I could see it in the way she'd pull back a little more when James was in the room, the way she avoided eye contact with both of us if we were all together. And I hated that. Not her caution. I understood that. I hated that I couldn't reach for her, even subtly, when I knew she needed it most. One night after James went to bed early, I walked into the kitchen and found her standing by the sink, arms crossed, staring out the window. He asked me today if I'd been going out, she said, still facing away. I leaned against the counter, keeping my voice low. What did you say? She glanced at me over her shoulder, eyes tired. That I've been working more. He nodded like he believed it, but I don't know, he's not a kid anymore. I crossed the room slowly, deliberately, until I was behind her. I didn't touch her, couldn't risk it, but I stood close enough that I knew she could feel me. We knew this wasn't going to stay easy, I said. She turned then, just slightly, her face close to mine, lips parted like she wanted to speak but wasn't sure how. What happens if he finds out? She asked. I didn't answer because I didn't know. That night, we didn't kiss, didn't touch. We just stood in the kitchen like two people on opposite sides of a cliff, afraid to fall and terrified not to. But the space between us didn't last. The next night, when the house was quiet again, I found her waiting in the laundry room. Lights off, only the moonlight coming through the small window. She didn't say a word, just pulled me into her like we hadn't touched in weeks. There was urgency in the way she kissed me, a kind of desperation, like she needed to prove to herself that we, were still real. I felt it in her grip, in the way she held onto my shirt, in the way she whispered my name against my neck like a prayer. We didn't even make it out of that room. Just lost ourselves right there between baskets of folded clothes and shelves of detergent, quiet, controlled, but full of fire. Afterward, we sat on the cold tile floor, backs against the wall, still breathing hard, not saying anything. She reached over and laced her fingers with mine. I hate lying to him, she said finally. I nodded. Me too. But neither of us said we should stop because we knew we wouldn't, not yet. The fear was there now all the time, but so was the pull, and somehow the risk made it sharper, more intense, like every stolen moment mattered more because it could be the last. We were playing with fire. We knew that, but we were already burning. We kept going, quietly, carefully, like fugitives hiding in plain sight. Every day felt like a balancing act, measuring words, glances, footsteps. We had no roadmap for what we were doing, no name for it, just two people pulled into something that didn't care about consequences or what anyone else would think. James still hadn't figured it out, or maybe he had and just didn't want to know. He'd stopped making jokes about me being part of the family, though, started asking more questions about my plans, about job interviews, about when I thought I'd get back on my feet. Monica kept her distance when he was around, smiled just enough, spoke just enough, never more. But the quiet between us wasn't empty anymore. It was charged, like a wire pulled tight. One afternoon, the three of us were watching TV in the living room. James passed out halfway through the second episode. Monica and I sat on opposite ends of the couch, legs curled under us, a full cushion between us like a border neither of us wanted to cross with him there. But at one point our eyes met, and that was enough. There was so much in that look. Want, fear, 1,000 unspoken questions. But there was also something quieter, a kind of calm, the kind that comes when you stop pretending. That night, after James had gone to bed and the house was still, I found her in the backyard, wrapped in a blanket, sitting on one of the patio chairs with her feet pulled up underneath her. I didn't say anything, just slid the door open and stepped out into the cool air. She looked over at me and I could tell she'd been waiting. I sat beside her. She passed me the edge of the blanket. We didn't speak for a while. The yard was quiet except for the hum of distant traffic and the soft chirp of crickets. I used to be afraid of being alone, she said finally. I looked over at her. You're not alone now. She nodded, eyes fixed on the sky. I know, that's what scares me. I understood what she meant because I felt it too. We'd created something real in a place where it shouldn't exist. And now having it, feeling it, made the idea of losing it unbearable. I don't feel invisible anymore, she whispered. I took her hand. I finally found where I belong. She turned toward me slowly, eyes glassy but steady. I leaned in and kissed her gently. No urgency this time, just the kind of closeness that says, I see you, I know you, and I choose you. We didn't go inside right away, stayed out there until the air got colder and the stars faded, wrapped in one blanket, one quiet moment, like the world had forgotten about us for a little while. But reality never forgets. The next few days, we started talking about it more, about what we were doing, about James, about the future. We didn't have answers, only more questions. Do you think he'd ever forgive me? She asked one night, lying beside me, her voice almost a whisper. I paused. Maybe one day, but not now. She nodded. I don't want to hurt him. I know. The thing is, we never made a decision to end it, and we never promised forever either. What we had wasn't built on declarations. It was built on moments. Stolen, secret, sacred. And we chose to keep it for as long as we could. We didn't know how long that would be, maybe a week, maybe longer, but we both knew the clock was ticking. So we leaned into it one last slow afternoon, her head on my chest, my fingers brushing lazy circles on her back. The house quiet, James out, the world paused. In that stillness, she looked at me and said, if this is all we get, I'm glad it was with you. Oh, she. I kissed her forehead. Me too. We didn't need a future to make it real. We already had the truth of it. And for now, that was enough. Whatever happened next, whatever came when the secret became known or the silence broke, we'd deal with it. But in that moment, we didn't flinch. We didn't run. We held on. Because sometimes, even when you know something can't last forever, you love it like it will. What does it mean to truly be seen? To find a connection that makes you feel whole when the world feels fragmented? Reflect, if you will, on Darius and Monica's story, a tale not just of forbidden sparks, but of the profound human need for understanding and belonging. What lesson emerges when we consider the delicate dance they perform, balancing secrecy with the bond that feels undeniably real? This narrative invites us to ask, how often do we overlook the quiet moments that define our lives, those fleeting connections that awaken something dormant within us? Darius, displaced and uncertain, steps into Monica's home and discovers more than shelter. He finds a presence that sees him, not as a guest or a burden, but as someone who matters. Monica's words, "It's rare being seen," echo a universal truth. We all crave recognition, not just of our existence, but of our essence. Their stolen glances, whispered truths, and tender touches reveal a powerful lesson. Life's most meaningful moments often arise in unexpected places, fragile and fleeting, yet capable of reshaping our understanding of ourselves. But with this beauty comes risk, the tension of secrecy, the fear of discovery. Doesn't this mirror our own lives, where we weigh the safety of routine against the courage to embrace what truly makes us feel alive? Their story stirs the heart, reminding us that love, in any form, is a courageous act of vulnerability, a choice to hold on to something sacred, even when the world might not understand. So what moment in your life made you feel truly seen? Have you ever risked everything for a connection that felt right, despite the odds? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might resonate with someone else out there. If this tale touched you, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Let's keep exploring the lessons that make us human together.